Hello, everybody. I apologize for starting a few minutes late. We're having some technical difficulty. Mrs. Jeanne, if you can't hear me, you just let me know and I'll point to you and then you can talk and if you can't hear us, type in the chat, but we need you to type in the chat anyways. Welcome to Maker Monday, and today we are talking about Mrs. Jeanne's painted paper kit. Nasco's so excited to partner with Mrs. Jeanne. And if you don't know who Mrs. Jeanne is, you will after today. I'm not going to give you too much about her because she is our featured special guest and guest of honor. So I'm going to give her the opportunity to share with you. But at the end of this session, provided we don't have any technical difficulties, I'm telling you, if you feel bad at any given point in time for your Zooms and something going wrong, technology hates me. So don't feel bad because I know how you feel. But at the end, we are going to give the full kit away. And I've taken some of the kit apart to show you bits and pieces of it, but somebody's going to win the whole kit. Our part number, at some point, I will type in the chat so that you can look it up online and see what it's all about. But we've got the books, we've got paint, we've got some texture tools, and there's texture tools that you can add to it that are easily available. So with that, I would like to welcome Mrs. Jeanne Styczinski. And I always hope that I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
You did great.
Thank goodness for being able to call you Mrs. Jeanne, because that makes it super easy. It is an absolute blessing to have you here today. So thank you for being our guest. And please tell us your story. Tell us how you got started. And then you can even take us through the process and I'll paint along. If you did bring the supplies, play along and join in as we do it. If not, just watch and enjoy, and then you can play this back when you get the video. But make sure to type in the comments, because that's how we're going to draw randomly the winner at the end. You must be present to win. I know we're going to make you watch this whole thing, but you'll love Mrs. Jeanne. She's so good.
Oh,
so thank you.
Sweet. Very sweet. Hi, my name is Jeanne Styczinski, and boy, I don't even know where to start. Years ago, I was a kindergarten teacher, and I absolutely love children's picture books. And on my bucket list was to write one. And I wrote "Mama, How Does the Wind Start to Blow?" When I was still teaching, obviously wasn't retired. And a friend of mine talked me into sending it into an awards, the Moonbeam Children's Award, which is an Indies publishing award for people who self-publish. And I got a gold on it, which I was so excited. So then I decided that I would write another book because I wasn't really quite maybe sure how I got that award, that I wrote another story then, Papa, Why Does the Sun Shine? The Mama book is about a mom's love, and the Papa book obviously is about a papa's love. It's a counting story, and they both go together because I think a papa's love is just as important as a mama's love. Since then, I've written another book called Who Will Be My Friend? It's a book about friendship and diversity with woodland birds. And I always say in my books, I have great back matter. In the counting books, there is a counting line in the back. In Who Will Be My Friend is 3 different ways that you can make bird feeders, and the characters, a little bit about the characters. So it's a very sweet story about a little owl trying to find a friend. But when that sweet story is done, they can learn actually about a nonfiction about the birds. This summer, I had another book that I illustrated for another author, Papa Chuck's Garden. This book too is about a sweet papa who loves to garden. And in the back of this book is parts, first the vocabulary of that is in the story that children may not understand. And you have tools that you need to garden, how a seed grows, parts of a plant. And in the middle of the story, it talks about the 4 things a plant needs to grow. And again, that sequence of how that seed grows. So not only are my books very sweet books about a real sweet story, I really try to put that educational piece in it, because as a kindergarten teacher, you know, I really felt like when you're reading, you want to pull this book out for science or social studies. And I mean, it's nice to have just a sweet book, but we have so much to teach during the day that you really have to mesh, you know, those categories together. Anyway, I have another book that's coming out.
Now.
What?
I said cross curriculum is a
Thank you.
big deal right now.
My brain, I haven't been in the classroom in now 5 years. So sometimes I forget those buzzwords of exactly what people are talking about. But I do have a new book that the Papa Chuck book came out this summer. My new book comes out on Thursday, and I pick it up from the printing press in Stevens Point, and it is called Little Bee on the Farm. And it is truly going to be my sweetest little book. It's about a little bee who flies through a farm looking for nectar, and then discovers all the different animals on the farm and the products they make. And then she finds her garden where the nectar is, and then flies back to her hive and makes her product. With the bees, with her sisters, because most of the worker bees are girl bees. So again, it's a sweet story about a bee. So that 5th book comes out this year. So as a teacher,
so
yeah, it is. You know what, like I said, when I went back on my bucket list was to write 1 book. And now I'm on my 5th book and starting on a 6th book for another author. It's a book about maple syrup, and that will come out in March. So, you know, I don't want to really admit this, but I don't have an art background. I have a graphic design background, which is still somewhat art and design. I went to UW Stout and then ended up architecture, you know, product management. I went through a bunch of different little different majors before I finally hit early childhood. But before that was the graphic design major. And now I feel like I've come full circle because I'm back in graphic design. So from there.
And you are, I mean, don't sell yourself short though, because you have truly become an artist.
I have, absolutely. And sometimes, like I said, I still have a hard time saying what I do is art because it comes so, I love it. And it came from a spot that was in my heart. And I've just continued with it because I just absolutely love painting papers and working with kids too. And this is the story of how I met Kris. I was at Adam's Friendship working with Leah Keller, and I was just there for a week for an art in residency. And Leah had asked Kris to come for a day just to help out because we really had large groups. Believe it or not, we painted with like 80 kindergartners. So we needed lots of hands. And Kris was there, and she was very intrigued with my process and the paint I was using. But at that point, I wasn't really happy with my paint. Because all of my paint came in 2-ounce bottles, and she could see that I'm opening it up, I'm pouring them together, I'm mixing them. And that part of the artist in residency, when I go into a school, because I'm painting with so many kids, was hard. And then she said, well, have you ever looked at, you know, our paint, our acrylic paint? Mm-hmm. And I said, I used it in my classroom when I was teaching, but once I got out of the classroom, I was just using the paint that I was painting professionally with the kids, with the kids. And so it was a very expensive paint also. But make a long story short, then I ended up going out to where the paint was made. Kris invited me to see their process of making paint. And the only thing in that process, I love the colors, but I wanted more of a variety of colors. And so I started mixing some of their colors together. And I was about to say in the kit also, and you can see it in I'll pick up my computer and go into my back wall, the Nasco mixing chart. And you can see that it's once I started mixing the Nasco paint colors together, I really felt like it was just so nice. And I could even, it's like, it could be math for kids, it could be science for kids. Literally, you're taking the colors, one part of a red and 2 parts of a blue, whether it's a tablespoon of, if you want a really small mix, you could do a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, half a cup to 2 half a cups. Basically, it's a chart that I came up with after I spent days of mixing and what colors I like the best. I came up with my 20 favorite colors. And as I'll bring mine back again a little bit. So as I mix mine, obviously I have the big gallon, I think they're half gallon or gallon paints, but then I mix them and I put them into a container like this with a number on top and a number on the side, so that no matter how I'm looking at it, I'm able to grab the color pretty quickly. From when I'm painting with kids, or just if I'm painting, sometimes I paint with those colors before I even start. So that's my story with Kris. It was a beautiful kind of meshing of me having a kind of an issue with the paint I was using when I was going out to art and residencies and using then their bulk acrylic, and it working out just absolutely beautiful. And the colors just were amazing. And as you're printing with that paint, it holds it very nicely on the texture or the object that you're printing with. So
Mrs. Jeanne,
mm-hmm.
we are saying goodbye to bulk acrylic, the name.
Okay. And I thought you had.
It's kind of a weird name. And so even though people get it, it just is weird. So we're going to call it Nasco acrylic, and it's going to get a facelift pretty soon. And I'm
That's
real
awesome.
Excited about it. The paint is going to stay the same though. So
yeah.
Stay tuned for that. I can't unveil too early, but Nasco acrylic is going to replace bulk acrylic, and same paint, but it's going to be a much more beautiful label, and it just makes sense. It's acrylic paint.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. To be honest with everybody, with the pandemic, I have not been out to a school visit for a while. It's been a year and a half.
Right.
And I think actually, Kris, as we closed down, I was at Nasco at Fort Atkinson. And really,
like 1 or 2 days before we got shut down.
Yes. And even when we met, we're like, okay, should we be doing this? We're not even, we had it on the calendar and we went with it, but 2 days later, there really was. And really since then, I have been out to the Fall Creek Elementary with finishing a installation that I had done with them. But the paint is, I think a new branding for that paint is a wonderful idea, because Nasco acrylic sounds so much nicer too. And they know exactly where it comes from. So,
right.
I mean, it just seems like when they see it, that's a great branding choice. But I enjoy using the paint, and I can get all the colors that I need from that paint with the kids, depending on if I'm working with, like one school district, I did animal prints. So you can do, as you're looking at your hues and your different colors, to a very bright garden print with different things. So I think you can get variety. And for me, I get those 20 colors that I really like, but I still go off of those, and you will do the same thing. I mean, you are probably better at mixing paint than I am. But I love the way their paint works with kids, just because it does come in a bulk container, and I can use it to mix, especially if I'm working with 80 kids at a time. I don't have time to be emptying small little containers together. But anyway,
and it's one of those things that it really does teach math, because you know, teaching the measuring, or the, you know, 1 part to 4 parts. And whether you're, like you said, whether you're using a small, you know, truth be told, when I was mixing, I even used a plastic spoon, because 1 part to 1 part, you know, might not have been the exact science, but for the most part, you've done such a great job on this color mixing poster. And then it also gives students that opportunity to try different things too, try different mixes. Now that they've got this, after they've done it, they're like, what if I put a little extra white in there? What if I did 4 to 2, and you know, that kind of stuff. So I really like that as well. Tell us about the process, and while you tell, I will do, and that will also get other conversation going. And if you have questions for Mrs. Jeanne, type them in. We want to make sure that everyone who's on this call, and I'm just looking at my computer over here, has their name in via the chat, so that we can randomly pull one name. So somebody's going to win the books and the paint and all that kind of stuff. But before I do that, tell us about the process of creating this amazing painted paper.
Well, I love my process of how I paint papers, and I kind of got it in my kindergarten classroom. I paint on newspaper. I really looked at, as the kids were painting, I always had newspaper on the table. And as we used that newspaper over and over and over again, and their paint, of course, they never stayed right where they're supposed to. That's why you put the newspaper down. It would go off on the newspaper, and I felt like the newspaper was so gorgeous that I started using it for the back of bulletin boards, and I would be cutting out lettering for different things, and then using it for collage, for art projects. So what I do is I start out with just a plain sheet of newspaper, and I painted a solid color. And once that solid color is painted, I let that dry. And so when I go into the classroom, I always have, to start out, I have those 20, 30, 40, 50 pages already painted for that first group of kids. And what they do when they come in is they paint a solid color first, and that's really for the next group. You know, if I'm doing 7 classes in a row, sorry about the phone in the background. So I paint before I go in, and so those kids paint a solid for the next group. And then they get my paint solid paper that's already dry, and they start printing on it. They can texture on it. They can, you know, I teach them 2 processes for sure. And one is that you are just going to print. So Kris right now is using a fork, and she's just going to start printing on that paper. So you can use many different things. Like I have a little slideshow kind of put together. And like I said, Nasco has lots of texture tools that you can purchase commercially. So while Kris is doing that, I'll grab a couple of those, but I do have them. So you have these rollers that you can use with kids. Nasco has the little squares. They have, I think these are actually ceramic, but I use those, these little painted ceramic, I don't even, texture tools. And so there's lots of ones that Nasco has commercially that you can get, but you can also use lots and lots and lots of tools just around. And that's the neat thing about the kit, is you could purchase the kit, you have everything in there, because you know teachers are just so busy. So, but yet once you get that kit, you can then add to the kit. So you can add your Legos, you can add your inch blocks, you can add, I was a kindergarten teacher, so I used a lot of things from my classroom.
This was some foam that came off of some sort of stamper thing. Sometimes you'll see foam like this in, like when you buy appliances.
Yeah.
And so it had this cool diamond shape. I'm like, oh my gosh. Kids blocks, right? Did you have like a baby block too, a wooden baby block? That one's fun.
This little baby, this is an older block, but I love the side of it because it has some really nice lines on it. I have some older spools that I use. Really, so many things have texture, so you can just keep adding to it. Kris and I were saying like the fork is like one of my favorite ones, and it's pretty easy. Legos. What else do I have there? I also have some textured
I
rolling
love the
pins.
fork.
Yeah, my textured rolling pins I really like. Or potato mashers. There's all different kinds of potato mashers that you can have the kids, print. The thing with potato mashers, always you have to just say no smashing so that they splash, that they're printing, so that they can get the paint on the paper, not paint on everybody else. So I think you get
So
it.
Mrs. Jeanne, I'm just going to interrupt because, that's what I do.
That's perfect.
Like Mrs. Jeanne is amazing because she's got it down to a science, and this is her area of expertise, and she is super precise, and it's actually like mesmerizing to even watch. And so the patience it takes for students, and we were with kindergarten through fifth graders, to have the patience to do like this fork the whole way through is really fun to watch too. And there's some that will 100% do it all the way through.
Absolutely.
And then there is, Cece Baldwin, my granddaughter, who will just get crazy. But even on the crazy ones, you still end up with like these really beautiful prints.
I think that it's so calming. A lot of times teachers, when you think of painting with 80 kindergartners, you think, oh my gosh, how is that even possible? But really, once they get their plate and they get their little texture tool, and they have to print the whole way. I really talk about a row going back, and it is a pattern. And once they get to the bottom, they can get another sheet. It is quiet in the room. I really have no discipline issues in a classroom when I go in and, get them going, which to me is phenomenal. And then they take their plate up if they want another, I usually have them print a couple different things on a page. So then they bring it, they bring their plate with that object, they grab another plate and bring it down and then print on top of that. The other thing that I do is with a dry sheet of paper is I paint totally over top of it with another color, is the other thing that I really love to do. And then once you paint over the whole thing, you're doing a resist. So you're taking some of it off so you see the back side. And sometimes when I have to like reproduce something that I've made, if I'm in a book and I'm like screwed up and need some more paper, it's hard to replicate it. But then sometimes it is like, I can't remember, did I do the blue first or the brown first? Or did I, sometimes once you get going, it's so intermixed that it is hard to tell. So my process of printmaking paper, sometimes now that I'm printing, I don't use newspaper as often. My first 3 books are on newspaper. The 4th book I did, Pop-Up Chuck's Garden, for Cindy. She did not want newspaper showing through. So I use newsprint, the same product, but just without the print. The print sometimes does make it a little dark. When I did the Fall Creek flower garden, I think we did all of that also on just regular newsprint paper. So the newsprint paper works really, really well. Once the kids print it, it goes really well on just a dry rack. My dry rack that I have a portable dry rack in my office in my little studio. Once I bring it down, the one thing that you will have to do a lot of times is just get a piece of tag board, because sometimes it falls through. I'm sure it does for you with other projects that you're doing, is you just put it on top. And so the kids, and then once it dries pretty quickly, which I like also about the Nasco acrylic, that by the time 2 classes kind of come through, you're already ready to take some of those off. Depending if it's dry and they're printing or if it's too wet. So you know, it's just a management thing I'm sure you deal with all the time with as you paint with kids. So that truly is my process. When the papers are done and you have lots and lots of papers, like I kind of picked, while Kris was talking, I kind of picked my computer up and went back to my wall. Sometimes when I'm printing, I need a little inspiration of, like, I've printed so much. Sometimes I'm like, what else can I put together? What colors do I really like together? That's why it's important for me to use kind of sometimes those same colors. I have that little inspiration board in the back where I do a lot of my printing. But if you go on my website, sooner or later, I'll talk about my website, and you'll see that, you know, as I collage, I use, you know, my papers, I just think are very beautiful. And I just think anybody who does painted papers, the kids' painted papers are gorgeous. Look at Kris's painted papers. They are absolutely gorgeous
And
also.
Oh, and you're so right about collaging with it. It gets to be so much fun.
Mhm.
And I'm not the best at choosing my colors, but I'm telling you,
Oh,
you almost can't lose.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you almost can't lose. But the one thing, again, I want to talk about the paint is that I have went into buildings and I've went for K8, pretty much K6, K5 are kind of my base groups that I work with, but I have done a K8. And it is amazing the printing that they do. But whether it's special needs kids or regular ed kids, kindergartners to eighth graders, it gets done and you really can't tell what group did what in some ways. It's just, to me, that's what the amazing part. You can't fail with it. It's a win-win. The papers get painted, and then you have papers for lots of different projects, not maybe, you know, the project that if I was coming in and doing an art in residency with you, we usually have lots and lots of papers left over for different projects also.
I love that you mentioned special needs, because when we were with Leah's class, there was like 3 or 4 at one time with one aide, and they were all able to do, and it was fantastic. Katie says, actually, there is, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Great way to teach texture. It says, do you have kids get their own paperback or just throw them all together? And then
Yes.
I'm thinking, if you put it in, if you put them on a board with their name on it, you could keep them most of their own and then trade maybe. And then Katie, I tell my students they are sharing the paper, so most likely they don't get them back. And Mrs. Jeanne, you do that. This is all about community.
Yep, nobody gets their own paperback. The thing is, once you start collaging, you need so many different colors. So if you are collaging even like an animal, a flower, you are talking about 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe different textures, colors. And in really a half an hour, by the time the kids get to the table and paint their textures, they sometimes get to 2 or 3 sheets. We do not do anything with names. All the paper gets dry. They get cut into fourths most of the time, depending on the project I'm doing, and it is community paper. So I sort it then out by color, and there's bins of different colors, so the kids know right away what color they're going for. If they're doing a stem, they may go to the green, though I'm very open to whatever color they want to make their stem out of, or their flowers. And I do have a little bit of a picture tutorial that is not very long about some of the residencies that I've done, Kris. So I don't know, at some point, do we want to put that on?
You can, yep, you
Share
can
my
share
screen?
your screen whenever you're ready, because you are actually a presenter.
Okay,
And
that sounds awesome.
yep.
I'm going to just come over here and grab it and get it on my screen, full screen. Oh, let's see. View. Okay, now I have to get back to this always. Why do I always have a trouble with this, Kris? Here, let me go here. because I didn't have it totally on my screen yet. So you're gonna have to,
No worries.
here is the Microsoft that I want. And I think that's what I want to share.
Yes, it is up there. School visits. I see it.
Okay, all right. And I kind of just went off of my school visit. And now let's see if I can get it to be a full screen. There we go. Here we go. Okay. So if I do a school visit with you, sometimes I come in and I just talk about being an author illustrator. A lot of times I come in to do family nights where they are making their own book. And usually they have painted the paper during the day. So it's like a 4-page, they may have already pre-wrote something and they're just doing the illustrations. Sometimes I go in with my papers and the kids come up with their own, whoops, sorry about that, their own story off of one of my stories. Mama, how does the wind start to blow? Does it start when a hyena starts to whatever? So he's just taking a making believe off of one of my books, his own page for a class book. I went into Cashton, Wisconsin, and they wanted to make their community. So building a better world. And they made their community, everybody had a sheet of paper and made their own, you know, you had to say who wants to do the buildings, who wants to do the roads, who wants to do the cars, who. So you talk about, first you do a chart of all the things that you can see in your community, and then kids have to volunteer to make the different objects that are in the community. With another school district from the owl who will be my friend, we all did birds and they did their own bird tree. Somebody did a flower garden. Sometimes I'm just teaching the art of collage. Kelly Christensen in Manitowoc, I did a book with them. And this book, Our Animal Adventure, each student made their own. First we printed paper, and then each student was able to make their own animal. And then we categorized it, and it was just a reference book. So all 450 students have a picture in this book that they were able to purchase at price. I think they ended up paying, it was 70 pages. And I think they ended up purchasing it for $4 or $5, but they could have ran it as a fundraiser. Connie Graham and Weston, they did a kindness book with me, and each of the grade levels did a different animal of how they could be kind. And I can show you a little bit of both of the inside of those two books that those buildings did. But sometimes I do permanent installations in buildings with the art on a wood background and a plexiglass top front. And here is Mandy Culver with her day and night garden. And then, whoops, we'll go down a little bit. Tasha Newton, Fall Creek. They did a flower garden, a 60-foot flower garden, and painted the papers with the students. And then the students were able to make the garden. I placed them on the boards, got the boards ready, found somebody who would cut the plexi for me. And that project was the project that I started back with the pandemic. And we just finished it this summer. Here's Sarah with a installation that she did in her library. Here's the kit. I know Kris has it in front of her, but as you look at it, you can see that there are 2 books. There's a lesson plan also that goes with this, and the color chart. You also get some containers. I want to show you the cup containers that I use also. If you are doing lots of mixing and want to hold those paints, you know, look for a little bit longer and not store them. Here again is, you know, the texture tools from Nasco before we started a project, and the beautiful colors that are produced from that paint. Here are some other texture tools that we used. And now obviously that bulk acrylic is not going to be there anymore, but the Nasco acrylic will be. And here you can,
it's the same exact paint, it's just the name change.
Yep, and I absolutely love it. Here's this little guy who he's got a dry piece of paper in front of him, and he's printing. And he obviously maybe wasn't listening too good for the direction. You're only supposed to have 1 plate and 1 texture, because Usually I have a plate and a texture and I have about 25 of them. And so really there's enough, only a little bit more, but there's enough for each of them to have one. And that's why they have to print across. And by the time he gets down with this, he should have then go back and get, like, this is a tape dispenser. If you don't know about plastic, when your tape is off of your roll, it makes a great double circle. This is a top of a hair gel, which makes a great circle. So, I mean, there's a lot of things out there too that you can just find to add to that kit. Here are the papers once they're done. Here's a stack of pink, a stack of purple, and I just stack them up. And once they're stacked, this is what I mean. You get your papers and you just put them, I put them in boxes so that kids can, you know, categorize, and it's a little bit faster there for them to go to the green, the blues, or the pinks and find the color they want. I'm not going to be at Art Ed this conference this year. I was there for probably 3 years in a row in Wisconsin and absolutely loved working with teachers. They are the funnest group to work with. Besides, I have to say some of my kindergarten colleagues, of course, but getting to know art teachers, you guys are just a special group. And here is Kris. She really loves, absolutely loves painting, and she loves painting with kids. She's so positive. You haven't had her in your classroom before. I just love the energy that she brings to a classroom and how she supports each of you with the projects that you're doing. Kris, you are just as sweet can be. And this is how fun.
Exactly what I needed on this Manic Monday. Thank you very much. But you know what?
The other thing, Kris, just one more thing. I have one last picture, I think, here. This is a kindergarten classroom. They painted the paper in the art room. So the art teachers was sweet enough in this building to, the teacher went to them and said, could I have you do this process with my kids? And then can I have the kid back? And they're making a 4-season apple tree for science in their classroom. Not even in the art room. The art room, they just made the paper, but the teacher wanted to do this back in the classroom to use with their fall curriculum. They were studying apples and apples through the season. So I encourage art teachers always to reach out to different grade levels, to work with, there we go, I'm back, I think, to work with different teachers on different projects. You know, some of the project can be started in the art room and then the teacher can just finish it in their classroom, and it's a win-win for both of you.
I think the collaboration is fabulous and you're so sweet. I needed that on a crazy Monday when technology is driving us nuts.
Yeah.
But you know what? That energy comes from the excitement that you had created, and that is always in an art teacher's room. This safe space where I can do something different. And the fun part about this is you're using this awesome painted paper that's not just construction paper. So you're really thinking outside of your little creativity zone, and it is super fun. I just kept collaging while you were talking because it's that much fun to do. And I've got it's just, I gotta, Mrs. Jeanne, I gotta show you something else. And this was, my papers were super dark, but I took cardboard rolls, paper towel, toilet paper. Some teachers are like, do not bring your toilet paper rolls in, but they'll take paper towel rolls. But I covered it with pre-done that I had already did, and then I tried to mix them up aesthetically. It had a little bit of a dark look, but I bet you with a little bit of finesse, you could make this bright and colorful, and then you could create this really fun wall. But I also used cardboard from Lucky Charms. And so just again, all of a sudden, with some acrylic paint, newspaper, cardboard, you are coming up with some really imaginative things.
Very much so.
Questions?
I'm going to show
who is Trisha, who is telling me that you love the colors I chose. Thank you. I need my art teachers telling me I did good. I am your elementary and middle school student.
Yeah.
I might have a leg up on some of the first and second graders on this particular project though, just because I got to do it a couple times. And so now I think I'm a little bit of a Mrs. Jeanne expert, but yeah, it's love, love, love. My daughter works for an art center and a community art center. And she needed some paper one day and she goes, Mom, do you have any extra paper in your art studio, which is a creepy basement, I'll tell you. All of a sudden she comes up and she's like, what is this magnificent paper? I'm like, that's Mrs. Jeanne's painted paper. And she's like, can I have some? I know, right? It's like, you just don't want to throw even the little
No.
scrappy scraps away.
No.
I've become every art teacher out there.
I know. I
Hold
feel
it
a little
up again
creepy,
so we
like
can screenshot.
a little bit like a hoarder sometimes, because I find the smallest scrap that has a cool print on it and I need to keep it for something.
Katie, what do you want us to hold up that you can screenshot? You can't screenshot the poster. You have to buy the kit for that. But oh, my project. Oh my gosh, now you're my new best friend. All right, screenshot it. I'll take a picture of it and put it on, I'll finish it and then I'll take a picture and put it on our Facebook page and our Instagram.
Oh, that's
Also
so sweet. Thank you, Kris, for demonstrating also as we went.
Mrs. Jeanne, show some of your papers up close though.
You know what, I was showing a little bit on the back of wall here, Kris. I don't have, I'd have to walk upstairs. I paint in this studio and I collage in another spot, another studio. This is my painting studio. So upstairs in that, but I do have this, Kris, of some papers
Yes.
that I do.
Oh, that's just gorgeous too. And I am showing the inside of Papa, Why Does the Sun Shine? And it just has these strips and it does give you the idea of, you start seeing some of these papers and I love that. Not to mention that the books are just absolutely delightful. And
Yeah.
Teachers, when you do this in your classroom, don't forget, you get the books with the kit, but also, and I would absolutely recommend purchasing those other books of Mrs. Jeanne's. And I say that we don't sell her full library. So go to her website, mrsjeanne.com, correct?
That is correct, mrsjeanne.com, or you can follow me, please, on Instagram, is Jeanne_Styczinski on Instagram. But I want to show you the kids' work. Okay, this is.
Oh my gosh, yes.
This is the book, Our Animal Adventure from Manitowoc. And because Manitowoc was a K-8 building, I could not think of 800 different animals to put in this book. And so some of them were honored by the prints they made, and the other students were honored by the animals that they made from those prints. So each of the students picked out of the prints they did their favorite prints. And the book starts out with those animal prints, so that they were honored in a way, that everybody had contributed to this book. If the papers weren't printed, those cool animals would not have been made. So here you go. Here's the table of contents of the book. And we did just categorize them by animals. So, you start out and each of them have the name. I purposefully did not put their name by the animal. I did not want kids opening up the book comparing a kindergartner's animal to the 5th grade animal. This is a mixture of K-8. But in the back of the book, if you really wanted to know who made an animal in the book, then you could go to the back of the book and you could find out. Here we go. I'm going to kind of slowly go back to the back of the book. You can find out the page under what animal, mammals. And if I went to page 35, I could find the mammal that my friend made. So that right away, they're hearing that they're really being, they're really looking at the art for what it is and not who did it, which I
love that though, because when when you are often doing what I did and cutting the papers, like you've grabbed up some papers, I'm always sitting next to a kid and they're like, I made that.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you didn't. I totally made that. But it is funny. They always want to be like, Mrs. Jeanne is using my paper right now. You know, I mean, you do.
Well, I was at Manitowoc and they didn't understand the book concept. And one of the kids said to me, okay, so we're making the book and you're selling it? I'm like, oh no, I'm selling it to you and it's your book. You know, it's like your teacher is selling it to you. I'm not using your papers for my books, but it is funny sometimes how they perceive things. But this is the Kind One to Another. It's a kindness book that Weston School District did. And of course, because they had their sponsors, some of their sponsors were from the Wausau area. You know, all of those were put in the front of the book, but the kids made all the art in the book, just with my guidance of what they should be. This is a kindergarten group, did bees, and then did flowers. And it starts out, kindness considers in the way bees bloom, look to each other. So it's just a kindness book, and each of the grade levels did an animal in here. And this book turned out really sweet also. Very different ones that, you know, I've done more reference books on color, like this was the animal one. I've done a color one. And then I've done also stories where it's trying to teach something, but yet their work is in there, which is very cute too.
Mrs. Jeanne, are you available at this time? And I ask because we're sort of amidst a pandemic, if anybody didn't know. Are you available to go to schools right now, or are you a little bit on depending on?
It's really depending on their school district right now. I have not accepted any school. Those schools have reached out to me. We are on pending, kind of just waiting to see how this year works out. I do feel like I was like, you know, as I left teaching and started going into schools and then met Kris, and then it's like, oh gosh, I can, you know, kind of promote Nasco's paint at the same time of going into schools and your great product. Everything kind of shut down. So I felt like I had worked my way up, and then I've just been on this stand with schools. And the reason I love schools is because I taught, and I think that's my fix. You know, I left, I never subbed. I got right back into my book once I left teaching. And like I said, with my 5th book coming out, and I'm working already on a contract with the 6th book that I'm just illustrating, I didn't write it. Life has gotten very busy for me. And if you go on my website, it's going to be, I'm flying out to North Carolina next week to redo my website with the sweet people who helped me with my website. And I'm going to get other products on there. I have cards now that are coming out, and book bags and different things. So that my website has evolved also. Everything has evolved, but with this shutdown of schools, I have now evolved in a different way because I've had time to just really think through where I'm going with all of my beautiful painted papers.
We are slowly running out of time, but we still have a few more minutes, and I'm only giggling because now I have glue on my fingers. And I didn't bring my mouse in. A lot of great comments are happening. Love my colors. Thank you. I love how you can, all the various shades and tints come through each sheet. Yes. I've had cool days, warm days, and complimentary days to create fun papers, but not have been able to make a lot of painted papers like this. This can also be like an ongoing station, that it would be kind of cool. You could have the station set up, and you know, when you get early finishers, that kind of stuff. I kind of love that idea.
I would have to say, I know there, you know, Sally Johnson at Wakanda, I know she has a spot already set up, and it's going all the time. And maybe not all the time, but when she does her painted papers, because she has an art club, and they will come in and help with different colors that maybe kids maybe they're short of some reds, and that group comes in, and it's always just kind of set up there for them to do their papers.
And I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Dalphna says, is there a website for us to be able to create our own books with our schools? You know what, that you might want to reach out to Mrs. Jeanne via her website to get some tips on creating a book, because I'm sure she would be more than willing to do that. And tell you how, because yeah, unfortunately, you know, I know a lot of schools are not even allowing people to come in. So
Yeah.
even if you were willing, you might not be able to.
Yeah.
Hopefully in the future that will happen.
Yeah.
So before we pick a winner, make sure that if you have not made a comment, even if you just want to type in hello, the great news is it's pretty random, because somebody behind the scenes is going to randomly draw the winner. I get to announce it, so I get to be, you know, Oprah, you win and you win, except only
so
one
generous
person
of you,
wins.
Kris. That is so generous.
Well, it's exciting, and we want people to, we want you to get it in your hands. We want you to see the value. And honestly, the value, one of the big values besides that cool poster is the actual lesson plan. It's on a little bit heavier cardstock. It has pictures. It has, you know, all of your steps, and, you know, it really becomes a little piece of even curriculum, because it is, it's art, it's literacy, it's math, it's science, it's a little bit of agriculture, it's so many different things. And it's social emotional learning too. There's kindness in there, and there is, you know, who you are, and who everybody in the world is. I like the idea of using the art to design a community by being community in painting paper. I mean, there is so much truth to that, the sharing and the, I enjoyed watching that everybody knew that their paper was going into this community pile.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed when kids looked over and said, you know, Billy, I like what you're doing. You know, those are cool colors. That's a neat texture. Oh, hold that up, hold that up. And just tons of excitement, which I know you guys are used to, but I think you love it when it happens to this day. So, so a few other things. We have another Maker Monday coming up in October. We're doing a little bit less of them, only because we know that you are zoomed out, you are spending lots of time virtually, but we also have a complete professional development library. And if you're interested in that, shoot me an email. My email is kbakke@nascoeducation.com. And, you know, go on Nasco Education's website, and, you know, you'll be able to find me easily, or call our 800 number. But if you're interested, I can get you a 2-week trial of that as well. Our winner is, and hopefully I will pronounce your last name correctly too. I'd say your first name, but I'm afraid there's more than one first name. So let me just double check here. Trisha Callahan. So Trisha, type in, you know, type in that you're still with us and say, yay, I won. And I would just want to make sure you're here, because that was the rule. Yay. Cahalan, like Van Halen, Cahalan. Excellent. You for sure are a rock star. So we've put in my email address. So Trisha, send me an email with the address that you want me to send it to. If something is in there that is gently used, it's because I opened it up. I tried not to open up the paint, but I might have used one of your texture tools. And so, but you get the books and the paint, and we thank you so much for joining us today. Mrs. Jeanne, thank you for
thank you. This was
sharing
wonderful.
Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing your time and your talent and your resources and just being so willing to help everybody in this community do what they do best, which is teach. So
Yeah.
thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time for Maker Monday in October. And Mrs. Jeanne, keep
Yeah.
doing what you do too. Bye,
Yeah.
everybody.
Hi, guys.